Whew. Feels good to have a day finally that's less than 80 degrees. Even though the temperature says 78, says feels like 80 today. I love it. It's beautiful out here. I could even take it even cooler than this. I have to say, this has been like the hottest November that I can remember in 15 years living in Miami, guys. It has just been a scorcher of a month, basically feeling like summer still for most of the month. So hopefully we're gonna get more cooler weather like this to stay. And today is Friday, guys, and I am trying to stay as close to home as possible when shooting these videos, especially on Fridays, because the traffic situation here has been an absolute nightmare. You know, sometimes people ask me in the comments, like, why don't you go here? Why don't you go there? Why don't you go to Fort Lauderdale? All these places, like, just to get out of my neighborhood, guys, sometimes takes a half an hour now. The traffic has been so terrible. You know, when you have a place like Miami and you have thousands of people pouring in here, and permanently too, and then seasonally on top of that, like now, you know, this time of year, it's almost Thanksgiving. People here from all over the world enjoying the warmer weather while it's freezing everywhere else. We have Art Basel coming up in December. That's a huge thing people come into town for. And when you live in this small little island like this, there's only a couple ways to go everywhere. And if you're stuck, you're stuck. There's no alternative route. I mean, check out this footage from my dash cam yesterday, going by the drawbridge over here. It's just nuts, guys. It's just bumper to bumper everywhere. Basically gridlock, you're stuck. But hey, the price to pay for living on a beautiful, basically tropical island. So just want to let you guys know, most of the time that's why I don't go too far, because unless I'm already in the area for something else, I have no incentive to leave here because everything is just a grind to go somewhere. Now let's talk about home sales. Now, for the 9th month in a row in 2022, the number of homes that are closing and actually selling has fallen once again. From September to October, the amount of homes that sold is down by 6%. That's the slowest pace that the National Association of Realtors has seen since the year 2011. And now it's to the point where the amount of closed home sales is down 28.4% from last year, guys. So that's how much these increased mortgage rates are having an effect on the market. You know, people think that everything's just going to continue to go up and up and up, but it's basically impossible with these dynamics at play, because what's happening is housing affordability is just continuing to deteriorate because the prices haven't fallen enough yet to really incentivize people to get back out there at these interest rates, and these closed sale figures are proof of that. And if you guys want to look at what's happening with home prices, right now the median home value is now only up 6.6% year over year from 2021 to 2022, because values have been falling basically since June. And I think by the time we get to the first quarter of 2023, that number is basically going to be break even from what it was a year ago, and maybe even continue to go down further from there. Got one for sale. The good old, let's see if I can double my money in less than a year and a half. Starting off at $600,000, buying it last year in 2021. Fast forward to today, trying to sell it for $1,550,000, and they're taking the approach, let's list it high and continually drop the price until hopefully someone comes along and buys it. But one interesting thing that we can look at is just how much desirability and location of your home matters so much. You hear all those parrots, guys? There's a ton of them up here. Those are all those little green parrots that live around here. Because if you have a property that's priced right and it's in a desirable location, 24% of homes that closed in October actually received offers over the asking price. So that's almost a quarter. That's pretty significant. But you can also contrast that with the amount of homes that are sitting on the market for 120 days or longer. Those properties are needing to cut the price by about 16% to get them sold. The experts are predicting a 20% drop in housing prices during this crash, right? But if it's still 2022 and people need to lower the price about 16% to sell a house that's not selling, then I think we're going to see larger than 20% declines, pretty much because the math calls for it, right? If we're seeing the amount of closed sales basically fall off a cliff for the year, down almost 30%, and probably going to continue to fall into next year as these mortgage rates continue to stay high, then I think you're going to have to see home prices come down even more than 20% in many cases, because they're already lowering it by 16% to get it sold when the property is sitting on the market for too long. And generally, when the property sits for too long, that's usually the number one culprit, is that the price just doesn't make sense for somebody to buy it. And one thing that this report says, the most amount of sales that are dropping off a cliff right now are homes that are in the $250,000 or less range, because a lot of them just don't exist anymore. You don't have very many homes in that price range, so that could be one reason why you're not seeing a lot of home sales in that price range. And then also the homes that are $1 million plus, because obviously when you're looking at places that expensive, especially at these rates, you're looking at a very small pool of people who can actually afford something like that. And so basically what that means, houses that are in the middle, which are basically what most people can afford and kind of like the maximum budget, basically houses between 250 to 500K, are still going pretty strong, in the sense that this is kind of like the median price in most desirable areas across the country for average homes nowadays. And so when something like that comes on the market, that's kind of like the type of property that fits the criteria for what most people are looking for. And that's where you're seeing the bulk of the closed sales right now, which makes total sense, right? When you have a lot more inventory in that price range, and that's what most people are looking at, and that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of closed sales in that price range. And all this information that we're going over here right now is from Realtor.com, guys. And they are saying that because of the extreme volatility that we've seen over the past couple of months with interest rates for mortgages, that's a pretty good reason for most people to sit this one out for a little while, at least until next year, to see what's going to happen with rates. Because you guys are seeing the rates go up, and then they drop a little bit, and then they shoot right back up about a week later, which is probably what's going to happen again, especially after the next Fed meeting. So we'll see. That's coming up very soon in December. But basically the message here, even from Realtor.com, is that if you have the luxury of time on your side and you can wait this out a little bit longer, then that's what they're saying you should do, because there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And speaking of uncertainty, here's another layoff story, guys. They just keep coming week after week. And like I said, it's not like I want people to get laid off, but literally every single week we are now hearing new reports about people getting laid off. And who's the latest one this week? Carvana, guys. Yeah, the car company that has those big glass towers where they keep your car, they'll come pick up your car for you. Basically an online car dealership where you don't have to really deal with anyone, and they pay for your car. They come and pick it up at your house and give you a check or send money to your bank account. Well, this company is now in trouble, and they're laying off 8% of their workforce, which is equivalent to 1,500 more people losing their job, guys. Now, when do you start looking at this and start adding this up and saying, wait a minute, that's 1,500 from Carvana now. We had 10,000 from Amazon. There's 11,000 from Meta. I can't even remember how many Twitter laid off, and that's just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. I think people can start seeing the picture of the pattern here, right? The pattern is it's week after week, company after company announcing layoff after layoff, guys. That's what's happening right now. And this is such a fresh story that there's not much detail on this yet, other than they're laying off 1,500 people due to their stock price plummeting. So what is the common denominator here that we can also look at? If you work for a company like Redfin, Carvana, Meta, Amazon, any of these type of companies that are publicly traded on the stock market, if their shares are publicly traded, then there's a high probability that you could actually get laid off when stock prices start to plummet, because this is one way that these publicly traded companies try to stop the bleeding, because their ultimate purpose is to serve their shareholders, not you as the employees, guys. So if the share prices start falling, guess what? people are on the chopping block because saving all those salaries will help boost the company's earnings, which is ultimately what the shareholders want. So you got to remember that. And obviously, this can affect companies that are not publicly traded as well in a recession like this. And when the economy is not doing so well, if sales are down, well, they got to get rid of people. So obviously, this affects all businesses across the world, but it's pretty easy to predict layoffs coming. If you work for a publicly traded company and you see their stock price going down right now, there's a high probability that that company could be next to announce layoffs. And I'm pretty sure next week and the week after that, we're going to hear about more and more of them. Man, some of these houses, guys, are just in dire need of extreme repair. I mean, look at this place. The deferred maintenance on some of these places and the yard is just like pitiful. But you know, that's why you get investors and people like that coming in here, buying up these homes and cleaning the area up and charging double. Because if they're doing stuff like that, they're actually adding value to the home and the neighborhood and can afford to do that. When you see things like this in neighborhoods that are supposed to be really nice, like here in Miami Beach, and you know, people aren't keeping up with the property, then that's a prime candidate for the property to basically get bought by a flipper and try to turn it around. Not saying that every flipper is equal and they're going to do an amazing job. You know, they might just do a half-assed job getting the home ready for somebody else. But that's part of the reason we're seeing home prices go up so much in areas like this too, because a place like that should basically be like the cheapest house on the block. But if somebody can turn it around into something beautiful and make it desirable for somebody else, that's where the value lies. Now, I want to thank one of my viewers, John, for sending me this story. And actually, if any of you guys watched Dan from I Allegedly, you may have heard this story yesterday because I listened to him too. But there's a couple things about the story that Dan didn't cover that I want to jump into a little bit. But first, before we get into the story, let me just show you guys something beautiful. Now, this story is about a couple from Orlando that have a food truck business together, and they last year put down a $25,000 deposit to buy a brand new home in the area. The home price that they agreed on was about $500,000. So these guys definitely aren't broke, because you got to have some money to buy a $500,000 house, first of all. It's taken well over a year for the home to be finished, and it's to the point now where if they were going to buy the house today, their new mortgage payment would be $1,100 higher than it was a year ago when they first agreed to buy the property. And they said they don't want to buy it, and the developer said, okay, well, if you don't, you're going to lose your deposit. All right, that's pretty much how it goes in sales contracts. If you back out of the contract at the last minute, they're going to take your deposit. But the developer offered to give them about $10,000 to spend towards buying down their interest rate. And what this would do for them, right now they're looking at a 7% interest rate to buy this house. And if they get this credit from the developer to buy down the points a little bit on the loan, it's going to put it just below 6%. So probably like 5.8, 5.9%, which is not a fantastic rate, but obviously it's a lot better than 7, and it will save them a ton of money over the life of the loan. So I don't know if these people are going to move forward with the transaction, because that was one of my questions when I heard this story from Dan. Like, okay, are they going to lose a deposit, or are they going to move forward now that the builder is offering them this $10,000 incentive? It sounds like they're probably going to move forward with the deal, because now that they're offering to buy down their rate for them, then that's probably going to be enough to push them over the edge and get them into the property. Got one for sale here real quick. It is just astonishing how many people here literally try and do the same thing over and over. Another flip, guys. They bought for $1.9 million in April of 2021, and then listed it in February this year for $5.2 million, somehow thinking someone's going to come along and pay for that. No one did. Place is off the market now, still sitting empty. Because at the very end of their story, they basically were quoted saying, you know, the payment's higher than they expected, even with the mortgage rate buy down from the builder, but they're excited to get the house. And I know when people have that, you know, shimmer in their eye to buy the home, guys, probably nothing's going to stop them. and this would probably be enough to actually get them into the property. So I'm sure these people are actually going to move forward, buy the house, and they won't lose their $25,000 deposit. However, in this same article and this same story about people losing deposits, there was a different couple out of Oregon. They actually did lose a $15,000 deposit for not agreeing to move forward on their home purchase. And what happened to them is not only did they lose the $15,000 deposit, but the builder turned around and sold the house for $90,000 more than what they agreed to pay for it. So this builder basically got away with murder. The problem is with these new construction home contracts, the entire contract is written in the favor of the home builder, guys. So this is something you have to keep in mind if you're ever going to buy a brand new home. The terms in the contract are totally set in their favor, not in yours. And so you can pretty much guarantee that you could be looking at losing your deposit if you decide to back out of the deal at the last minute. But not all contracts are created equally, and one thing that could help either one of these couples is the fact that if they can no longer qualify for the mortgage to buy the property because the rates have gone up so much, if the contract allows for it, that could be a way to get out of it. When you're buying a regular house here in Florida, like a regular resale property like this, if you have a mortgage contingency in your contract, usually you have about 30 days to get a loan commitment. And if you can't, you can give written notice to the seller and get out of the deal and not lose your deposit, basically because you were denied financing. And since that's a contingency in the contract, that's your out. I can't get the loan, therefore you need to release me from the contract. And that could be in some home builder contracts. So if you're ever in one of these situations and financing is the number one reason you can't move forward with the contract, go ahead and look at it and see if that's a way to get out of it without losing your deposit, because that can obviously save you a ton of money. Like this couple from Oregon, they lost the 15 grand. But when I talk about stories like this on the channel, I always try to look at it like, okay, what's the lesson to be learned from this that I can share with you guys to help you, essentially? And so I think the actual lesson to be learned is different for both of these situations. For the first example, the first couple that is looking at losing the $25K deposit, those people, if they were watching my channel a year ago or other channels like mine, then they would probably know that jumping into buying a new construction home might not be the best idea right now, considering all of the supply chain issues we were having and hearing about the mortgage rates starting to go up the following year. Because obviously mortgage rates didn't really start going up until the beginning of 2022. If you're looking at November a year ago and you were going to buy, you might still think, well, I'm still looking at a great rate, but the problem is you can't lock that in with new construction. For example, if these people watch channels like mine, they would know that and maybe think twice about putting that $25,000 deposit down, knowing that the delivery date on the home could be severely delayed due to supply chain issues, and with the warning that interest rates are going to go up. And with the second couple that lost the $15,000 deposit, the lesson to be learned there, I think, is actually totally different. First of all, it was significantly less money. Losing 15K is much better than losing 25K, basically, in anybody's book. Obviously, it's not good to lose that kind of money at all, but I think the lesson to be learned from their story is it's better to lose the 15K than to get into a situation where you're buying a house that you basically can't afford, guys. And that's the decision that this couple made, and ultimately was probably the right one for them. And as much as it hurts to lose $15,000, I'm sure they can rest easy at night knowing that they're not paying for a mortgage that they're wondering month after month if they can afford or not. So that can really eat away at your peace of mind and your quality of life if you're in one of these situations. So I'm sure at the end of the day, this couple is relieved. And then you find yourself in any type of real estate deal where you feel your gut says it's better to lose the deposit than to move forward with this for whatever reason, then you should probably listen to your gut, guys. Like my personal experience, every time I listen to my gut with basically anything in life, it always works out in my favor. And when I don't, it always backfires. So that's pretty much the big lesson that I think everyone needs to learn, is that if it doesn't feel right, even if there's money on the line, you probably should listen to your instincts, because chances are it's probably correct. And remember how I talked about the other day, the reason I'm not talking about these mortgage rates falling down a little bit is because it's not making a huge difference? Well, here's the perfect example of that right now. Even if you got the lowest mortgage rate that was available in this recent decline, you're looking at 6.61%, okay? And that's gonna save you about $100 a month versus where it was at before. $100 a month, guys. It's $1,200 a year. I'm not saying that's nothing, but when you're looking at paying for a house, it's kind of small fries, you know? Only in the long run does it really add up. Is that enough to make you get off the couch and go out there and apply for a mortgage right now to save $100 a month? Because that made the typical mortgage payment from $2,542 a month go down to about $2,430 a month. So you're not saving much, guys. That type of stuff is not getting people excited. It's not getting people out there to buy, because inflation is still through the roof. And when you combine that with this situation where every single week more layoffs are being announced, it is just the recipe for disaster for most people to jump in and buy a home right now, guys. And I think that's why we're going to continue to see these closed sales numbers continue to fall throughout 2023. And all these big real estate firms are predicting the same. Redfin's saying it, Realtor.com saying it, the National Association of Realtors is saying it, I'm saying it here on the channel. All the forces are working against the housing market right now, and this is where we're at. Now, if you live in the UK, they're starting to see similar situations happen right now with the new construction market. One of my channel members, Nick, sent me this story about the housing market in the UK starting to offer up all these incentives once again to get people into new builds. They're doing things like offering you several $1,000s towards your closing costs. They're looking at giving you a nice furniture package for the home. They're offering to cover some of your legal expenses involved in closing the deal over there. And it was the same thing back in 2008, guys. In fact, back then, they were offering people up to 30,000 British pounds as incentives sometimes to close deals over there. Back in 2008. They would offer you different furnishing packages and landscaping packages for the homes, just absolutely crazy things just to get you to sign on the dotted line, because basically the tactic is here, the home builders can't afford to hang on to vacant properties that are already built, and they want to pass the falling knife on to you. Look at the stories we talked about earlier with these people buying new construction homes and them potentially losing their deposit, and one of them that is losing their deposit. And then look at these deals that in the UK, if you're over there, and decide if taking some of these incentives is going to be enough to get you to buy that property. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. And if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.